Welcome back to Logitech. If you want to buy a new PC in Q1 2022, you might want to optimize your budget for your CPU build. This video might be helpful for you if you want to optimize your budget for new PC build in Q1 2022. So let's get started from the high-end processor. You either want to build a Ryzen 9 5950X or 5900X, or maybe Intel Core i9 processor. Well, in my place, the Core i9 processor costs almost 50% more expensive than the Core i7. And the Ryzen 9 5950X costs about $750. The Ryzen 9 5900X still costs more than $550 also. So for my opinion, if you want to buy the high-end PC, you might consider buying the Core i7 12th Gen. Maybe you can buy the 12700K or maybe the non-K version. The multitask performance between the 12700K to 12900K is not much different, it's only about 20% difference. So here I compare the Core i7 and the Ryzen 7 and Ryzen 9 5900X. In my previous video, you can see that this Core i7 12700F perform exactly same multitask performance with Ryzen 9 5900X. Even though this Core i7 12700F can consume up to 180 watt, but the best performance per power for this 12700F is at 140 watt, which is same power consumption with Ryzen 9 5900X and 5800X. If you compare with Ryzen 7 5800X, this 12700F can have much better performance in multitasks than the 5800X. In gaming performance, this 12700F still better than this Ryzen 5 5600X OC. Well, if you compare with Ryzen 9 5900X, it might have same gaming performance. This 12700F only costs about $330, while Ryzen 9 5900X costs more than $550. With this cheap B660M Pro RS motherboard, you can get the total cost of the processor plus motherboard is only about around $450 to $460. And this motherboard already support power limit up to 140 watt, which is the best performance per power for this 12700F. Well, if you want to buy like Ryzen 7 5800X, it still costs more than $400, and that is without the motherboard. If you compare with the older generation, example Core i9 11900K, the cost of processor itself costs around $450, and the performance is significantly slower than this 12700F, and also the power consumption is higher than this 12700F. Now moving to the middle to high-end budget. Yeah, you can still consider this 12700 in the middle budget, but let's just talk about Core i5. If you want to unlock full performance of 12600K, you might need a Z motherboard. If you cannot afford buying 12600K, you might be considering to buy 12400 or 12400F. This Core i5 12400F only costs about $180, which is much cheaper than the competitor Ryzen 5 5600X. 5600X still costs about $300. This 12400F has same multitask performance with the 5600X OC. 12400F still better if you not OC the 5600X. In gaming performance, some games 12400F win and some games 5600X win. But I think overall 5600X still have a little bit better in gaming performance than this 12400F. And take a note that I using the RTX 3080 Ti to test. If you using maybe just RTX 3070, you won't notice any difference in the gaming performance between this 12400F and the Ryzen 5 5600X. In power consumption, this 12400F still lower than 5600X in stock, and in the gaming performance, it's much lower than 5600X stock. and it's only half power consumption compared to the older Core i5-11400F. This 12400F beats 7 nanometer Ryzen 5600X performance per watt, which is really amazing. With cheap motherboard like this B660M Pro RS or maybe the cheaper one HDV, you can get this processor plus motherboard at same price of the Ryzen 5 5600X or even cheaper. But I still prefer this ASRock B660M Pro RS because it has better VRM heatsink. The cheaper Ryzen processor is only either 5600G or 3600. Well, Ryzen 3600 is already outdated. It cannot catch up with the Core i5-12400F. While Ryzen 5600G is still good value if you want to build a mini PC with using the eGPU only. If you want to using the dedicated GPU, 5600G is not a good option. If you really tight in budget, you might be considered to buy Core i3 or Ryzen 3. This Core i3-12100F is already have better multitask performance than older Core i5-10400F. With only 20% price increase from the older 10th gen, it has significant 50% more multitask performance than the older Core i3 and better gaming performance also. So if you compare with Core i5-10400F, this 12100F still cheaper. And if you compare to the Ryzen processor, the Ryzen 3100 is priced almost 150 bucks, which is not a good value right now because 150 bucks you already can get 10400F. You can get 12400F plus motherboard with only 200 bucks right now. So this 12100F is the best build if your budget is really minimum. But considering the full PC build price, I still prefer this 12400F for the full build because the total price is not much different between building Core i3-12100F and Core i5-12400F. And 12400F has 50% better multitask than this 12100F. Okay, now let's talk about upgrade. If you already have Ryzen 5000 series, you don't need to upgrade to Intel 12th gen, unless you want to sell all your Ryzen parts and switch to the Intel and saving a little bit of money. If you have Core i5 11th gen, I don't think it's worth for you to upgrade to this Core i5-12400F because it only have 20% performance boost in multitask performance. For Intel user, the upgrade will work if you upgrading to the 12600K or above, because the multitask performance is significantly higher than the older gen. 12600K is already have better multitask performance than the Core i9 10th gen and 11th gen. Now get to the conclusion. If you want to build a new PC in Q1 2022, buying the Intel 12th gen is great value despite of a little price increase compared to the older gen. If you want to build new AMD processor, wait for Zen 4, because if you build right now, you will not able to upgrade it to the Zen 4 later since you need to change the motherboard. So you should not look for the Ryzen processor right now because the price is not worth and no upgradability for the future. Same with the older Intel gen. If you get offer for the old Intel processor, unless it's very cheap, you should not take it. You should take the 12th gen despite of a little price difference because the performance per value is better than the older gen. If you still talking about DDR5 motherboard, well, you can just use the DDR4 motherboard and still working fine. You can consider buying DDR5 after Intel 14th gen or maybe the Ryzen Zen 4 Plus. If you buying the DDR5 in the end of this year, maybe for Intel 13th gen or Zen 4, I don't think the price is already down as DDR4 right now. So buying DDR4 motherboard is the best value, and you still can use your old RAM to the motherboard if you just want to upgrade. Okay, that's all from me. If you think this guide is helpful for you, please press like and subscribe. And don't forget to check the link and description below. Thanks for watching.